Are you tired of being broken financially? Are you tired of the cycle of living paycheck to paycheck, never having enough, maybe even sometimes paycheck to Monday, just not having enough to make ends meet? If you can identify with that, then stay tuned. We're going to talk about it today.
Good morning, or good afternoon, or maybe it's evening. It doesn't really matter what time it is, and it doesn't even matter where you are. We want to welcome you to Wholeness Wednesdays. So grab a cup of coffee or tea and join our host, Beatrice Hutchison, as we explore and experience our journey to complete wholeness.
Greetings. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Completely Whole's Wholeness Wednesdays. I am your host, Beatrice Hutchison, and I'm so excited that you decided to join today. We are continuing our discussion on From Brokenness to Wholeness. There are too many of us that are challenged in this area. Money is one of the biggest stressors in life. Believe it or not, people generally struggle financially because we were set up to fail. We were not taught how money works. So we get caught in this rat race of working, incurring, and paying off bad debt and saving. Well, maybe not so much the saving. At least that's the intent, right? But we don't always get a chance to save. But we get caught up in this rat race. And it's really because we have the wrong perception and the wrong understanding of money. We don't understand how it works, right? We were never taught it. That may not have been a part of discussions coming up in your household, right? So we end up becoming broken in this area because we followed a process that we were trained to follow. So we have to unlearn what we know about money. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. This is going to be good. Pay close attention. Today we are going to explore how we can transform our financial brokenness into financial wholeness. And so we've been talking about that over the last month or so. But we're talking about how we can transform our financial brokenness into wholeness that will ultimately transform our lives for the good. And so once you learn it, you know it, right? And so once you know it, then you are equipped and armed, right? To go and take the world and acquire your wealth. So get comfortable. And as I always say, open up your minds and let's dive in. First, of course, I have to make a disclosure statement, as I usually do, if it's not my area of expertise, right? Although I have degrees in psychology and special education, I am not a financial licensed professional. Although I've taken training and have been mentored, I am not a licensed professional. So I simply share here on this channel what I have learned through study and through my personal and shared experiences. And so, now that that's out of the way, let's dive in. Today we're talking about from financial brokenness to financial wholeness. That's an important topic. We always want to know how to do better with our finances, right? To be better stewards. So just as a reminder, brokenness, what does it mean? So we've been talking about the Cambridge Dictionary's definition, which means a condition in which something is badly damaged and unable to work properly or to continue or work correctly. So it's a condition in which something is badly damaged and unable to continue or work correctly. And so where it relates to financial brokenness refers to a state of financial instability, lack, or mismanagement that causes stress, anxiety, and often long-term consequences in a person's life. So as I started out, I mentioned that it's one of the number one stressors in life, right? It's the number one thing that breaks up relationships, right? So it's something that deserves a discussion and us paying a close attention to. So this can manifest, financial brokenness can manifest in several ways, from poor financial decisions to uncontrollable life circumstances. And so we're going to start off with just talking about some examples of what financial brokenness, what it would present as in our lives. And so the first one would be living paycheck to paycheck. And so what this means is living paycheck to paycheck is someone who may consistently struggle to cover the basic living expenses each month with no savings or safety net in case of an emergency. And so what it means is that this person, and they live from check to check, right? If you get paid, twice a month, or you get paid biweekly or monthly, that means you're living from one check to the other, right? So the person living paycheck to paycheck is a common form of financial brokenness, because this is a place where income barely covers necessary expenses. So your money is pretty much spent out from the time that it hits your account, right? If you get direct deposit, but it's already accounted for is the point. So this creates constant financial stress and makes it nearly impossible to plan for the future or to even manage unexpected costs, such as a medical bill that may come up or some needed house or even car repairs, right? Emergencies come up all the time, but it makes it difficult to plan for these types of expenses when you're living paycheck to paycheck, right? It's already so tight. The next thing I want to talk about, or the next way that it will or may present in your life, is that there's unmanageable debt. And so, as I had mentioned earlier, bad debt, right? Because there is good debt and then there's bad debt. And we'll talk about that at another time. But today, we're talking about bad debt. So, unmanageable bad debt. And so, this is where a person may have accumulated significant amounts of debt, such as credit card debts, student loans, or medical bills, and it leaves them feeling overwhelmed by the inability to make regular payments, right? So even if they're able to make regular payments, then it's taking all of their income, right, to just keep up with all of the bills. But it makes it very difficult, and then you end up falling behind in payments. And so this unmanageable debt can lead to a cycle of borrowing more to cover expenses, right? Borrowing from friends, loved ones, or even from institutions, which can cause more stress on top of the stress you're already experiencing, and then damage also your credit scores and just leave you with an overwhelming feeling of being trapped financially, just caught in this cycle, right? I mentioned the rat race earlier. This form of financial brokenness often results from a combination of unexpected expenses, poor financial planning, or a lack of financial literacy. Very important. We're going to come back to that. Another way it may present in our lives would be through financial dependence. And so this is when a person relies entirely on others for financial support. So that would be, say, an adult child living with parents, or depending on an adult, depending on a partner, without contributing financially to the household. And so this financial dependence can lead to feelings of inadequacy, right? Because it's not always by choice. Sometimes there's just an inability to be able to contribute in the way that one would want to. And so it could lead to these feelings of inadequacy or low self-esteem and a lack of control over one's financial decisions. It may also strain relationships, right? Because then some can feel like they're being taken advantage of, or they may not see the person's intent to want to contribute. And so it can strain relationships, and it could also create an unhealthy dynamic where the dependent person has no autonomy, right? So if they're not contributing, then, we get to control what you do, which is not fair either, right? But this is the state that they may find themselves in. Another way it may present in our lives is that it may show up as job loss or unemployment, right? And so that's something that's never anticipated. Mostly people are looking for employment, looking for ways to take care of themselves. And so this is when a person loses their job unexpectedly, right? And struggles to find a new source of income. And so they may fall into financial instability, just not having a source of income. So job loss can quickly lead to financial brokenness, especially if there is little or no emergency savings, right? And in most cases, there may not be any emergency savings or not enough of it. And so the lack of regular income can make it difficult to meet essential expenses, leading to mounting debt, right? Because then you go out and if your credit score is good enough, you get credit cards to just kind of hold you until you're able to get employment. So then you end up mounting and racking up more and more debt and more stress. Another way that it may present in a person's life is the lack of financial literacy. Excuse me. And so I mentioned that earlier. Financial literacy is very, very key and important. It's paramount to us gaining control of this area of our lives. And so this is when someone may not understand how to budget, how to save, how to invest, or manage, excuse me, credit effectively, leading to poor financial decisions that result in ongoing money problems. And so, in this situation, there's a lack of financial literacy that leaves the person feeling vulnerable to making decisions that harm their financial health, such as overspending, right? Because if you don't know, you do what you see, right? You follow what others tell you or what you've seen, what you've witnessed. So you end up overspending, you end up failing to save for the future or failing to invest. And, you enter into high interest loans. You don't know any better, right? You don't know that there are other options. So you just go with whatever you know. And so I see a trap with this. I remember at least when I was younger and going into college, they had tables set up outside the college for you to come and join us, sign up for a credit card, and you usually have no idea, right? And so people prey on this ignorance, but it can perpetuate financial brokenness over the long term, right? Because you get involved in something that you have no clue about and you end up drowning in debt and just having financial instability. Another way that it may present in your life is that there may be overspending or impulse buying. So, this is when a person might constantly overspend on non essential items, leaving them unable to meet necessary expenses like rent or bills, those priorities. This type of financial brokenness arises from a lack of self control and poor prioritization of spending. Impulse buying and overspending can create short term satisfaction. It makes you feel good in the moment, but it can lead to long term financial strain, give you huge amounts of debt, and also leave you with guilt. And so that is something that we have to gain control of. Some people are stress shoppers, right? So when they get stressed out, they go and shop, but they are impulsive, right? It's not there isn't any thought or plan that goes into it. And so that's how it can cause that financial strain. Another way it may present in our lives is with inability to save for the future. A person who struggles to save for retirement or education, any goals that they have set, or even an emergency fund due to either a low income or poor spending habits. So, the inability to save is often a result of living paycheck to paycheck, as I mentioned earlier, or spending excessively on short term desires, right? Not long term goals or short term goals leading to a long term goal, but it's spending excessively on these short-term desires, just something I want, right? It also aligns with the being impulsive, right? It's just something that you want for right now, and then you buy it to satisfy that urge of wanting it. And so this prevents individuals from securing financial stability in the future and leaves them vulnerable to financial crises. Another way it may present in someone's life is bankruptcy. This is when a person has accumulated so much debt that they have to declare bankruptcy as a way to discharge their liabilities and to try to start over financially, right? You just get so overwhelmed with so much debt. I mentioned earlier about the credit card debt and just that bad debt just piling up so much to the point to where you begin to drown in it and you can't catch up. So that would prompt this particular person or someone in this situation to file bankruptcy. Bankruptcy is a form of financial brokenness where debts become too overwhelming to manage. And so it offers a legal path to eliminating debt, but it comes with long lasting consequences. Because, and also, it was something that's important to know is that it doesn't exonerate every debt, right? Like there are certain ones that would apply to this, but it can leave you with long lasting consequences, such as a damaged credit score that you have to recover from, right? And also limited financial opportunities as you're working to rebuild and start over financially. You may not have as many financial opportunities available to you as you once did. But it's okay. You can get back there, you can rebuild, and rather quickly as well if you have a plan in place and you know how to, right? How money works. Another way that it may present in our lives is that it with financial stress and anxiety, right? I mentioned about it being the number one stressor. A person may experience constant worry about money, even if they are not in immediate financial crisis, because of previous experiences or fears about the future. So this person is just very fearful and worried about not having enough, right? And so chronic financial stress can lead to anxiety, to sleep disorders, and even physical health issues. The fear of not having enough money can drive people to make poor financial decisions because you do it in haste without a plan or avoid dealing with their finances altogether. If I ignore it, it'll go away or it'll fix itself, right? And we know that that never happens. The next way, and this is the last one I'm going to talk about today, is generational poverty. And so, this is when a person grows up in poverty and continues to struggle financially as an adult, often lacking the resources or opportunities to break the cycle. So they get caught in this cycle of this is how I grew up, and then they just perpetuate the same cycle. And so generational poverty refers to poverty that is passed down from generation to generation, right? It's you and it basically deals with the fact that what you saw is what you continue, right? The same practices that you knew of or that you saw played out in your home are the same ones, or the ones that you were exposed to are the same ones that you continue to perpetuate, right? So then therefore you yield the same results. And so those in this situation often face significant barriers to escaping poverty, such as lack of education, right? They can't go to schools or advance their education if they would like to, get financial support, or even some employment opportunities. So, those are some challenges, some barriers. And then we do understand that there's also, at points, there are, or at times, there can be a spiritual component to it, right? I always talk about how the pillars are related, but it can also be a sign as a generational curse or you not being a good steward over your finances. And so those are some ways that it can present in one's life, this financial brokenness that we're talking about today. So as you can see, financial brokenness can take many forms, but solutions often lie in education. And I kept talking about planning, right? Planning and adopting healthy financial habits. It's important to seek help from professionals such as financial advisors or debt counselors to rebuild financial stability and work toward long term financial well being, and even work your way towards financial freedom. As we talked about earlier, I mentioned a few times that money is often one of the biggest stressors in our lives. It certainly causes brokenness. I mentioned about how it affects the body because you are stressed out about not having enough, right? So it can affect you. And I always talk about the pillars being interrelated and affecting each other, right? It can cause disease. The stress can cause illness. But it can also just cause brokenness overall, where you feel that you're in this endless cycle of debt, living paycheck to paycheck, and being unprepared for emergencies, right? Sometimes it's okay, we're going okay, we're making payments on time, and then all of a sudden an emergency comes up and it throws everything off. And so it's easy to feel trapped when you're struggling financially. But here is the good news, and that's why we always talk about not just the brokenness part of it, right? But we're talking about wholeness. And so the good news is that there is a path to wholeness. So let us take some time to now talk about what it means to obtain financial wholeness. Financial wholeness starts with taking control of your finances rather than letting them control you. It means understanding how money works, right? It's that literacy component, setting a budget, understanding your expenses, and creating a plan to manage your debt and to build wealth. And remember, we're talking about managing bad debt. But we are talking about the journey to wholeness financially. And so financial freedom doesn't happen overnight, but with consistent effort, right? It's about being intentional. I always talk about being intentional. But if we're intentional and we have a plan and we work at it and we're consistent in our efforts, it is absolutely, definitely attainable. Remember, it's not about how much you make. It's about how much you keep and how wisely you manage what you have, right? Being a good steward of what you have and just understanding and knowing what to do with it so that you can have your money work for you and not you for it. So, going back to the challenges that we talked about, or those ways that it can present, financial brokenness can present in our lives, we're going to now talk about solutions in those same areas. And so, living paycheck to paycheck, we talked about that person that only has enough to make it until the next paycheck, right? So, a solution here would be budgeting. Budgeting is key to gaining control over your finances in this situation, in all situations, but especially in this one. Reducing unnecessary expenses, right? So that may mean going through and looking at those charges, those subscriptions, and things that you don't need, right? Or that you don't use. So reducing those unnecessary expenses and gradually building an emergency fund that can provide some financial security. There are also other ways as well. It's also good to seek financial education, very, very key, or guidance from a coach that can also help to create a plan to break you out of this cycle. So, one of the best first steps towards financial wholeness is creating a simple budget that aligns with your goals and values. Think of it as a roadmap to where you want to go financially. And remember, your worth isn't tied to your net worth. It's about understanding the power of money and using it as a tool for the things that you need. And so, as a tool for the greater good and for personal peace. And so, this is a statement and a quote that I quote from Lynn Richardson, who is a mentor, but certainly financial guru, right? I'm going to show you one of her books later. But the other topic, one of the other topics that we talked about, unmanageable debt was the other one, right? We get so overwhelmed, we're drowning in debt. A solution here is to address the debt, right? It's never ignore it. Address it. Create a debt repayment plan Like a debt snowball that Dave Ramsey talks about. You may hear a lot of people talk about it, or a debt avalanche method. So there are different methods, but it's important to develop a repayment plan, right? That's where that education comes into key. Then you'll know which avenue to go, which would be the best fit for you. And so this will help to provide a roadmap for paying off that bad debt. So, speaking to a financial advisor, consolidating loans, or negotiating with creditors can also help reduce interest rates or monthly payments. And so, this is something you want to do, especially if you're overwhelmed. You want to make sure that you get on top of it, right? Don't disappear. Communicate with the debt agencies that you are a part of. The other area, how it presents, was with the financial dependence. So, in this area, a solution is to achieve financial independence by starting with developing your own skills and pursuing opportunities that allow personal income for you. Setting goals for saving and managing expenses while working towards gaining a source of income can lead to more financial freedom and self sufficiency. So, once you're able to make your own money, then you become a little bit more self sufficient, and it allows you to feel better about yourself, right? So, it's important that you seek those things if you find yourself in that situation. The next way that we talked about was job loss or unemployment, a situation that's unexpected many times. In this situation, the solution is seeking temporary employment or applying for unemployment benefits can provide immediate relief. Also, upskilling or retraining in a new field may also increase employability, right? So, you want to take that time to work on yourself, learn about what can be done in that time. So, whether it's becoming more, increasing your knowledge so that you increase your employability, or increasing your skills, finding out what else you can do, right? Maybe you have a skill or a talent that you could use to go into business for yourself. Long term financial health can be achieved by building an emergency fund once a job is then secure, right? So that you don't find yourself in this predicament again, right? So an emergency fund or an investment, something that will can serve as that you could use in case of emergencies. The next one that we talked about was lack of financial literacy. And so I've been talking about this because this should have been number one, but these are not in any particular order. But a solution here is that we want to gain financial literacy. It's essential to break in the cycle of poor money management. So that may mean reading books, and I'm going to share some topics a little bit later, attending financial workshops, or using online resources that can help individuals understand budgeting, investing, and saving principles. Even maybe hiring a financial advisor can also provide some personalized guidance for you in your particular situation. And there are many apps that support with budgeting. If you're interested in hearing more about that, I can do an episode on that, but share those apps and kind of walk you through those. But they're very, very helpful with helping you understand where you are financially and understanding your expenses. The next one that we talked about was overspending and that impulse buying. And so, a solution here is implementing mindful spending practices, such as sticking to a budget, right? Or waiting 24 hours before making purchases. That can reduce the impulse buying. So, you see something you want, and you're like, you know what? Okay, I'm going to wait on this. Let me really just reflect. Do I really need this? What's my purpose for purchasing this? That could help to reduce the impulse buying because, in most cases, you'll realize I don't really need that. But also, you can track your expenses and use budgeting apps, as I just mentioned. They can also help you to manage your spending habits more effectively. The next one we talked about was inability to save for the future. A solution in this area would be developing a habit of saving, even in small amounts. So this can help build long term financial security. Automating savings or contributing to like a retirement account, any type of IRA, Roth IRA, a 401k, also a 403, B, those you could also invest into, even different types of mutual funds and all different types of investment strategies you could also use, but you could set it up to where it's recurring. Also, financial planning for the future, including setting savings goals, is very, very important, right? So you have to set a goal, know what you want to reach, right? And it may not be your end all, be all, right? You may say, oh, I want to be a millionaire. I'm believing God to be a millionaire, right? That may not be your first set of goals, right? Your first goal may be, okay, I want to be six figures, and build from there. The next area that we talked about was bankruptcy. And so a solution here is, after filing for bankruptcy, you rebuild your credit and your financial health. It starts with creating a strict budget, paying your bills on time, so becoming very disciplined, and avoiding new debt, at least until you get reestablished, and then you could use good debt to help you rebuild your credit, right? So it's important to seek credit counseling and understand financial mistakes to avoid repeating them, right? Understand the mistakes you made. And once we know better, we do better, right? So make sure that we don't repeat those same mistakes. The next one that we talked about was financial stress and anxiety. The solution here would be, reducing financial stress requires proactive management of finances. We want to set realistic goals, right? I mentioned not shooting for the million as your first goal, right? But we want to set realistic goals. What's realistic for me right now? And it may not even be the six figures. It has to be where you are. Managing debt and maintaining an emergency fund that can create a sense of financial security, right? Having a fallback plan. Practicing mindfulness, being intentional about your spending, understanding your spending, and seeking professional counseling for anxiety related to finances can also be helpful. And the last one that we talked about was the generational poverty. And so the solution here is, breaking the cycle of generational poverty often requires access to education, right? Become understanding how money works, as I keep saying, having job training, mentorship programs that could provide skills and opportunities for upward mobility. Financial education and support programs can also help families build wealth and escape poverty altogether. And then, as I mentioned, if it's a spiritual aspect, then you have to deal spiritually with that, right? So you have to seek for deliverance, prayer, and fasting, and all of those sorts of things. But it still requires that you renew your mind in the area of money, right? So that once that is broken off of your life, you are able to make the right choices, be a good steward, and be able to grow your wealth and move towards financial wholeness. Some other things to also consider that could also aid you in your journey to financial wholeness would be to, first and foremost, and I think this is number one, it's important that you transform your mind concerning money. Money is a tool, and once you understand that, you use it appropriately. And so sometimes we grow up with these mentalities, especially in the church. You could think it's a sin to be rich, right? And so in the Bible, God talks about Christ. It's spoken about in the Bible that, he's rich in houses and land, holds the world in the palm of his hand. He was wealthy. Why wouldn't he want us to also be wealthy? Something else to consider. So we need to increase our knowledge, right? And so I mentioned about some books. I'm going to show you a few here. I have a long list, but I'm only going to share a few. This one I think is very, very good. Can you see this? The Prosperity Topical Bible by Apostle John Eckhart. That's really good because it gives you scriptures on what the Bible says about finances, right? About prosperity, to help you change your mind in that area. There's also a book called As a Man Thinketh by James Allen, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, The Richest Man in Babylon by George Clason, Another good one is, those are older books. There's a newer one, Millionaire Success Habits by Dean Graziosi. The 4 Hour Work Week by Timothy Ferriss are some. One basic one, and you see mine is all torn up. I use it so much. But Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki is also another book. I mentioned Lynn Richardson. This is her book, Living check to, it did not living check to check, but living check to Monday, right? You get paid on a Friday, and then by Monday, the money is all gone, right? And then also there is the E Myth Enterprise by Michael Gerber. And so these are some books also. There's a Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey, Increase Your Financial IQ by Robert Kiyosaki, and so many more. And I do also want to share, of course, I mentioned this in one of my previous episodes, the Shiro Planner by Prophetess Valora Cole. And so she was one of our guests, but she has a wonderful template in here, right, where it's a template, monthly budget, then there's like an emergency fund, helps you to track it, helps to give you a plan, so you're not just trying to do it alone. You have a plan here and a structure, right? And you can check off and you can use it as a tracker. But in addition to books, it's good to get a financial advisor or mentor. It's also good to, there are some reputable YouTube channels that teach on personal finances. So it's also good to listen to those and understand that there are so many out there, right? So you have to listen and learn and find out what the good fit for you is, because some people are against all kinds of debt. Some people believe in it. Some believe in this velocity banking. There are so many different things. So we want to make sure that we listen to all of it, but take what would do work or work well for us. Another one we want to think about is consider having or creating other streams of income. Lynn Richardson always says it's one stream of income is hazardous to your wealth. So it's important that you get other streams of income, right? So if you lose your job, then what happens? Then you don't have anything to fall back on. But if you create other streams of income, you have other income that's coming in. And if you're interested in learning more about that, I can also share tons of different streams, and we could get deeper into that discussion if you'd like. So do comment if that's something you'd like to hear more about. And so today I've offered quite a few strategies. We talked about the brokenness side of it, but we also talked about the wholeness side of it and how we can move towards wholeness in this area. And so I hope that you are able to take some of those, and we're about putting everything into practice, right? So we want to make sure that we do that. And so please make sure that if you like what you heard, as I always say, please make sure that you like, that you share, that you comment. I would be interested in hearing if you would like me to talk a little bit more, dive deeper into some of the things I mentioned today, because I did just kind of an overview. But I would like to hear what you would want me to talk about in relations to money or just wholeness. We talk about all areas of wholeness here. So I am so grateful that you decided to join us today. And again, I am Beatrice Hutcherson, and I am your host here. And remember that your journey to wholeness starts here. And as we end, let us affirm together, as we usually do. I decree that I will be whole financially. I declare that I will take the needed steps to implement change in my life in this area toward financial wholeness and debt freedom. My prayer for each of you today is that you will receive healing and complete wholeness physically, mentally, emotionally, and financially. That at the end of our journey together, you will never, ever again be the same. That is our goal, and that's what we're working towards. And so until next time, take care of yourself, mind, body, and soul. Stay blessed and be made whole.
We thank you for sharing this time with us here at Wholeness Wednesdays. Thank you for joining us to explore and experience this journey to complete wholeness. Please remember that we are only an email away. Your questions and input are welcome via bhutch@completelywhole1.com. See you next time here at Wholeness Wednesdays.